So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. That is my battery that is low, which is now hopefully no longer an issue. You are at the Connecticut Affordable Housing Conference. We are in the afternoon now, the 1 o'clock series of sessions, and we are very excited to have you here with us. My name is Danielle Hubley. I manage advocacy and education with the Partnership for Strong Communities, and I have our wonderful intern, Emily Luck, with us here as well. You are finding yourself currently at our breakout session 1.4, Advancing Opportunities for Co-locating Childcare and Affordable Housing. Before I turn it over to our presenters, I just have to say a huge thank you to our leading sponsor, the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, our visionary sponsors, Connecticut Department of Housing and Wells Fargo, and our champion sponsors, Bank of America, J.D. Amelia and Associates, MT Bank, Webster Bank, and the Millville Charitable Trust. And also our foundation sponsors, Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston, Con Resnick, Trinity Financial, and so many other incredible sponsors that have allowed us to make this conference happen year after year. We're so thankful for your support. And last but not least, a huge thank you also to our investor sponsors. National Equity Fund, Universal Healthcare Foundation of Connecticut are sponsoring today's session. A few quick housekeeping items before we get started. The session is being recorded, and we are going to make all recordings available on our YouTube account following the conference as soon as we're able to get it up. Please remain on mute. You are already muted, but please stay on mute unless a speaker asks you directly to unmute. If you are having technology issues, select the chat icon in the Zoom control panel and send it to either myself or Emily. We'll do our best to assist you as we can. Your speakers will let you know how they would like content questions to be submitted, but there is a chat feature, and I believe you can also raise your hands here as well today. Post-session, we just ask that you complete a session feedback survey. It's only 9 questions. It's super quick. It shouldn't take you very long, but that feedback is so important to us and to our presenters. It just gives us a great sense of what we can do to improve and expand on the conference in the future. And we always appreciate your feedback. And with that, I will get us started. Pass it off to Liz Frazier to get everyone started.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see everyone today. I'm really excited to be here. I am Liz Frazier. I am a program officer for Connecticut LISC. And LISC is the Local Initiative Support Corporation, and it is one of the nation's largest community development support organizations and community development financial institutions, investing over $2 billion a year to create sustainable communities of opportunity. And since 1984, LISC has invested nearly $95 million in communities all across Connecticut. And we're really happy to be here to present on this really great topic today. I'm going to share my screen and I can show you our agenda. And if this works, it will be great. Square screen, hold on, slideshow. And let's make sure this works. And okay. Can everyone see my screen? Oh, yay. Thank you. All right, great. So we're going to go right to the next slide in our agenda for today. Today, we're going to be talking about co-locating housing with early care and education experiences. And today with us, we have LISC National, Bevan Parker. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering. We've got Bevan with us today to talk about our national LISC work. We also have several spotlights from ConnCORP and GDDC. And also, I will talk a little about our LISC and OEC facility funding. I'm really excited for today's conversation and what we can learn from each of our panelists about the benefits and challenges of co-locating affordable housing with childcare facilities. It's of particular interest to me because in my previous position, I worked as a policy analyst focusing on multi-generational solutions towards strengthening family economic security and early childhood well-being. Studies show, that when parents have more opportunities, children have stronger long-term outcomes, and it really makes sense. Access to affordable housing, ameliorating transportation difficulties, and providing access to high-quality, affordable early care and family-centered programs can be a nexus for family opportunity. Yet our funding structures often don't consider both generations and as strategies as key to long-term family financial economic security. Often funding is siloed, one pot for adults, one pot for children, and the goals, objectives, and outcomes for each are considered separately. But co-location of affordable housing with affordable early childhood programs, and potentially other services too, is not just a convenience. It can also influence the health and well-being of a family unit. It can be one less stress on parents. It can mean less time on a long bus ride for little children. It means that parents can work knowing their little ones are safe in a caring and appropriate and also developmentally and culturally appropriate environment. And co-location can offer parents and children increased opportunities and really develop stronger communities and neighborhoods. So today we have on our panel, let's see, we are joined today by three fantastic panelists to talk about the power of co-location strategies for increasing access to childcare. Bevan Parker-Surkis is the Program Director for LISC National's Child Care and Early Learning Team. Bevan joined LISC in 2020, coming from the Reinvestment Fund, a mid-size CDFI where she raised over $45 million in grants and program-related investments for the childcare sector. At LISC, Bevan leads the Child Care and Early Learning Team in its work to build a national platform, deliver technical support, and assemble flexible capital. And frankly, Bevan has given me a lot of technical support as I've been doing our Connecticut LISC project. So she is indispensable. Our next guest will be Paul McCraven, and he is the Chief Operating Officer for ConnCORP, a community and economic development entity established to advance ConnCAT's mission to provide opportunities to New Haven's underserved residents. Paul joined ConnCORP after working in the banking field, including serving as Vice President of the Community Development at First Niagara Financial Group. And then finally, we have with us today Michaela Pingili, and she is the Deputy Director and the newest addition to the Greater Dwight Development Corporation team. She has joined GDDC in the early days of the pandemic and was deeply involved in the day-to-day operations of Greater Dwight's Montessori School on Edgewood, which provided her with a perspective on the challenges that teachers and families face on a daily basis. Her goal through this GDDC's next project is to help mitigate some of those challenges. So we have three really great folks this morning, and Bevan, I'm going to change the slide. And if you could start and tell us all about all the great things happening in the national setting.
Sounds great. Thanks, Liz. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Bevan Parker-Surkis, as Liz said, the National Program Director for our Child Care and Early Learning work. I'm a part of our national programs team here at LISC, which is one of the country's largest community development financial organizations, helping to forge vibrant, resilient, and healthy communities across the United States. We work with residents and partners to close systemic gaps in health, wealth, and opportunity and advance racial equity so that people and places can thrive. Since our founding in 1979, we have grown our national programs team to include health, safety and justice, economic development, childcare, housing, and family income and wealth building. And we have our community presence through our 38 local offices, including Liz, who's representative of our Connecticut field office. We have these scattered throughout the country, and we also have close affiliations and partnerships with smaller CDFIs in our rural network, which represent over 21 mostly rural counties throughout the United States. As I mentioned, I represent the early childhood work, where LISC has been an advocate, thought leader, and resource for the sector, investing more than $125 million to date and leveraging additional public and private funding for the development of high-quality childcare and early learning environments. LISC understands the importance of ensuring that all families, regardless of zip code, have access to high quality early care and education programs. Our work invests in communities, supports childcare operator sustainability and growth, and seeks to improve the quality of early learning environments, particularly in underserved communities. Our collective efforts inform education, policy, advocacy efforts so that we can realize meaningful systems change in a sector that has historically been under-resourced and overlooked. We do this through several programs, one of which is our Building Innovation for Equitable Child Care program, which was capitalized in 2020 and continues to grow. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So our Building Innovation program is really wonderful. It's really centering childcare within the context of community development. And really, it sort of utilizes a multi-pronged strategy. So really bringing what we think theoretically is a new set of folks to the table to talk about childcare. And that's mission-based developers and community development corporations who are working closely with communities to understand their needs and help to develop systems and supports so that families and residents can thrive. And really, the thought here is that if we can seed some early stage support for the context and the creation of childcare within larger development contexts, then we can have really meaningful change and offer a whole host of supports and spaces for families and children to thrive. So this really is seeking to push the boundaries of co-location, think innovatively about how we can incorporate childcare within the context of these developments, particularly as we come out of COVID and all the things that have happened. What we recognize, childcare is critical for families to get back to work. And we understand that, and we need to ensure that there's equitable access to these spaces and that they're quality spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So through these pre-development funds, we're able to support these developers in the thoughtful co-location of these spaces. And we're really sort of seeking to not just have childcare be that afterthought, but really intentional upfront planning in the early stage. Childcare is fraught with regulation, licensing requirements, and these are things that cannot be sort of adhered to post. You can't just create a space and say, hey, I'll open it up for a childcare operator. If we want high quality early learning environments, we really need to have those considerations done within the design phase. And so this additional pre-development support is really enabling these developers to more intentionally incorporate this work within their activity. If you want to move ahead, Liz. So as I said, we've continued to capitalize this since 2020. I'll talk through some of our programs and projects within this. But as we go, we really want to really focus in and zero in on that intentionality piece. And really, we're also thinking about not just center-based locations, but what does home-based childcare look like within the context of this work? So again, really pushing what we think of in terms of regulation, these sort of fraught systems. How can we educate developers, ensure that they understand the meaningful, how meaningful this work is to families, and that it's not that difficult or challenging once we give some educational components and get through some of those scary aspects of regulation. Next slide, please, Liz.
There you go.
So we've, as I mentioned, we've been successful in fundraising for this program annually since inception in 2020. We've got private funding from Pivotal Ventures and Salesforce, in addition to HUD Section 4 dollars that we're able to provide to these projects. We have 17 projects that are currently in the program. And they're really supported through our local offices. Oh, can you go back one? Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So we've been able to support through our local offices who really work to sort of bring these projects to fruition and to light for us. They also offer support to these projects in addition to our national office support. We're able to offer these pre-development dollars, and then the local office also participates in the work. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Liz. So as you'll see, we have these projects all over the country. A good fraction of them are co-location of childcare plus housing. And I'll say that's a function of those are things that make a whole lot of sense when we have families residing in housing. We know that families really particularly look for and seek childcare that's either near to their home or to their work. That makes their lives easier. And so when we're able to really put this access point very closely to where they're already starting or ending their day, it makes life a whole lot easier. And so I'll say we see a lot of that activity, but in addition, LISC's sort of foray and like our wheelhouse is in affordable housing. And so a lot of the connections and relationships we already have are with affordable housing developers. And I would say this is not dissimilar to sort of how affordable housing was connecting with community facilities or other social service entities and organizations early on. So as you sort of look through these things, it's not just 9 times out of 10, it's not just childcare and housing, but it's other support services that we're adding into this. And so that's where we're really seeing that intentionality, and some really interesting things happen as we think about how we're connecting families to resources, not just housing, not just childcare, but what they need to really work and thrive. Go ahead, Liz.
Here you go.
Thanks. So in addition to sort of the pre-development funding that I talked about, we're really sending these projects through a peer learning and cohort sort of model so that they can be learning not just what's happening in their local ecosystems, but really what's happening as part of this national cohort. Where are there barriers? Where are folks seeing challenges? What are the opportunities that we can lift up so that where we sit as LISC, we can be advocating at the federal level for policy changes, additional tax lever or financial incentives and other levers that we can be pushing to really create systems change. So here is just, from our last convening, which was really targeted on financing as we were moving from pre-development to development, how are projects sort of identifying funding sources? What sort of role did the child care operator can play and was playing in the sort of bringing some funding to bear for the development of the project itself. And so, a lot of this isn't rocket science. I'm sure you see this in your day-to-day activity with affordable housing. The thing is, when you bring in a childcare operator, it can afford you some additional access to pots of money that you may otherwise not have had access to. And that's a lot of the educational work that we do with our cohort to help them understand where those funding opportunities are and how to really leverage the concept of childcare within the context of this development from both funding, but also from an advocacy perspective. If you don't mind going to the next slide. So all these findings also help us to create resources for the field. And so, these are a sample of some of the things that we've done based on the convenings and what we're hearing from our project teams. How do we get employers at the table? If it is, housing plus commercial space plus childcare, what is that employer unit doing? What are local employers, large scale employers that are within close proximity? How are they accessing care? Is there an opportunity there? Again, thinking about what other funding opportunities that the childcare operator may bring to bear as a different sort of subset of a development partner. And then what are the sort of management implications and the asset sort of viability over time now that we've included childcare within the context of it? It's a unique sort of space that needs to be maintained, and there is a lot of deferred maintenance that comes along with it. It doesn't mean it's, you can't do it. And so there are some tips and ongoing operation supports that we help to have people understand up front so that they can plan accordingly. And then finally, as I mentioned, sort of we're learning all along the way. So we take all the data that we've received from our project teams, from what we're hearing out in the world, and we really look to, again, explore and represent those impacts of intentionality and the co-location. And so here's just 2 opportunities that we've had coming up. One is learning from this Mission Promise Neighborhood project that was out in the Bay Area. And that was 3 large-scale affordable housing units co-located with childcare. A few of the units also were reserved for home-based childcare. And then there's a whole host of social service organizations and nonprofits co-located. They actually share a staff person who helps to resource families throughout the context of all of the services that are located within this neighborhood plan. It took a lot of planning, but they were able to fundraise for this position. As I said, it's a shared staff position between the agencies. And it's really looking at these accountability metrics and some of these really measurable outcomes that we know are critical, right? And so we're looking forward to learning from them on what they've been able to find and how that's supporting their future fundraising, but also additional planning efforts. Also, we're funding some support to look at inclusive and neurodiverse learning environments coming off the heels of COVID. We know this is really critical for children and families, as we're seeing just lots of divergence across learning systems and what kids need. So every environment should be an inclusive environment, and this is an exploration of how we can bring in therapeutic services and full-time childcare for families to really access easily. And so we'll come up with some modules and have that out and available for both our childcare providers who are looking to be in these spaces, but also for developers to better understand what those needs from a physical environment standpoint need to look like. And I think that's it for my prepared remarks. Liz, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, that was fabulous. I'm very interested in many of the things you spoke about. I'm especially interested in the family child care and how that can be more intentionally included in co-location and how we might do that. So that might be something to consider to talk about later when we get to questions. So our next person that is going to be speaking is Paul. Is he here, McRaven? I don't see him.
Should be here.
I think he's on.
I don't see a picture, but if not,
I see his face and he's off mute.
there.
There he is.
I really
Okay.
I had to go
Hi,
on.
there you are, Paul McRaven. Thank you for joining us.
Yes,
And
good
please
afternoon.
tell everyone about your project.
Yes, I don't know what I look like. I'm on my phone because I couldn't quite get on the computer. But so we're doing a very exciting project in New Haven, Connecticut. We are doing a mixed-use project on about 7.5 acres on an old blighted strip mall called the Dixwell Plaza. And that mixed-use project is going to include 184 units of housing, a training center, the Hill Health Center is going to be doing a child and family guidance center, which is really going to focus on child trauma. And then the other part of the first phase will be a daycare. And the daycare will be for about 75 children, infants and toddlers. We are partnering with the Friends Center for Children, which is an established daycare provider in New Haven, whose goals really align with ours. This community is basically a historic African-American community in New Haven. It's really been suffering from a lot of decline and blight over the last 30 years, but it's now seeing a little bit of a resurgence. Right across the street from where we're building is the new Dixwell Q House. Down the street a little bit, there's a new project, the Mass Timber Project for affordable housing. I think it's like 60-something units. Around the corner from where we are is a new arts project called Next Haven, which is really focusing on the arts and bringing the community together. It's right around near Hill House High School. So we see this as a really critical piece. Our organization is called ConnCORP, and we were started about 7 years ago. And we started by doing a community index and really asking the community, what are the needs of the community and what do you see? What would you like to see on the site that we are building? So the response came back, jobs, lots of jobs, but also things like daycare, training, food. We are bringing in as well, and as part of a phase one, a grocery store. We have a partnership with the grocery store that we'll be bringing in. And education was another thing that they thought was important, and safety, public safety, because there's been that area has had some problems. So we basically in response to that, came up with a master plan and, which for the 7.5 acres, and have been working on first phase. And that first phase, it really the daycare and the training center and the Hill Health Center. And we are now about to commence demolition, which should start this week on the site. And we're looking to actually start vertical build in July. So we're almost there. It took us about 5 or 6 years. We had to acquire 12 parcels to make this happen and raise significant dollars. We were able to, very fortunate to have a $25 million commitment from a social impact investor that enabled us to make this happen. And that was done on very, very generous terms. There's no clawback, no payback. It's just all, I would say, equity, but the equity is any type of equity payment that we paid back to the social impact investor would go back into the community. So it's a win-win for everyone there. In the meantime, we've been raising additional funds because it's about the first building, approximately a $45 million building. And so we've been, fundraising for that building over the last 3 or 4 years and have now basically raised all that money. So we're excited about it. Our agency is only 7 years old. Our corporation is totally focused on the Dixwell and New Albany neighborhoods right now. We're really focusing in 3 areas: real estate development. We also own about a 43,000 square foot business incubator. So we're really focused on small businesses for the community and really encouraging entrepreneurship. And then we have a food business, which includes a small market and two restaurants. And we actually hire quite a few, and a catering company. And we basically hired almost 30 people in those operations from the community.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. And here's Paul's information if anyone is interested in getting in touch with him. And as I listen to you, it warms my heart to know that other services are being considered along with childcare and housing, that we're looking at total comprehensive services for families that include both children and adults. Especially important are those for children who are struggling or need additional supports, and also the training for parents so that they can actually acquire better jobs. So I think all of that is great. And I'm really interested when we're asking questions to hear more about social equity funding and how that helps and how you access that. And so next, what I would like to do is talk about the Greater Dwight Development Corporation with Michaela. Michaela, are you available?
Yes. Right.
Great. Can you tell us about your project? We went from Paul's large project to a very small project, but equally important.
Yes, we are a much smaller project compared to ConnCORP, but equally as embedded in the neighborhood as ConnCORP is going to be. So we are a neighborhood development corporation formed in 1994. And a lot of the ways that we have been doing our work is that we always have a neighborhood plan. And one of the main requests the community has always had has been childcare, which led to the conception of the Montessori School on Edgewood that is underneath our offices, the first and second floor. So when we spoke with some of the parents who've been bringing their children here, we've noticed that there's always a very high demand for infant and toddler care, and that feedback is what led us to purchase and acquire this new site, which is a historic property in the Dwight neighborhood. So once open, we hope that this will serve 16 children, and it's going to be just 3 units of housing, 2 of which will be available to teachers at a very low cost. And the hope for this project is, because it's at a low cost, that the schools could attract teachers with bachelor's degrees or with more specialized experience for infants and toddlers that they could bring into the school, because daycares do not make a lot of money. And finding teachers with extra qualifications has always been a challenge at the current site. So we're hopeful that, we'll attract those teachers. And then another comment that we've always gotten from the parents is that they wish we could be open for longer hours, which we're currently open 7:30 to 5:30, which is already 10 hours, but they want us to be open even later. So if we co-locate teachers into the building where they work, we're hopeful that then translates into being open for those later hours. So this building is about 7,000 square feet, of which 3,000 square feet, the entirety of the first floor, is going to be dedicated to childcare. So if you go forward a slide, I'm fairly sure I put a floor plan,
There you go.
or I didn't.
Yes, you did. Is that it?
No, that's not it. It's a different.
It's in the
floor plan.
wrong order, I think, then.
Yeah. So it's going to be one room for infants and one room for toddlers right now, and they're both going to be huge open spaces. So it's really mitigating a lot of the concerns that we've seen over our current site, which is that even if we meet the minimum square foot requirements for each child, it's just not enough room for them to really be able to play and have a full day. So we're going to have larger spaces over there, an indoor playground, a covered area playground, and an outdoor playground. So it's just playgrounds everywhere for them. So we're really increasing their gross motor activities over there. And hopefully this will even be a bit of a community space, because there's a whole carriage house in the building, and that could potentially become a space for the community to just meet and talk and learn about what's being offered for them in the community. And that's our project.
That is fabulous. It's a beautiful building, and it looks like it would make a fabulous area for children and for others to live there as well. And
Yeah.
it's a very, I think the idea of untraditional hours and approaching that topic is really important. We know that not every parent works from 9 to 5, that many work a second shift or a third shift even. And it's really important to be able to have those children, in a space that is caring and loving, and also a learning experience. So thank you very much for that as well. I'm going to move forward, and I am going to now talk a little bit about the LISC, and Office of Early Childhood, the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood Facility Fund. Connecticut is partnering with the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood to facilitate the Connecticut Early Childhood Construction and Renovation Grant Program. And this project is a total of $15 million, and $13 million of this funding will support the construction and renovation and quality improvements of early care providers across the state of Connecticut. This is ARPA money that was codified several years ago. So we're fortunate in Connecticut, first of all, I have to say this, to have the resources from other LISC early care construction and renovation projects across the country. Arizona and Rhode Island have both been doing these programs, and the insights and support from these partners have really informed and strengthened the Connecticut program. So it's really an opportunity to learn together and to grow a national program as well. The Connecticut program is in response to an early childcare crisis in Connecticut. Much of Connecticut has a severe shortage of infant and toddler availability, and some communities have only one infant toddler space for every 3 to 10 children who need care. Additionally, the old housing stock in Connecticut has left many home-based providers and some centers in real need of upgrades to their facility or home to increase the quality of learning environments and also address health and safety improvements. Since the end of July, an advisory committee has played a strong role in the development of the project, and details about the project, including eligibility considerations, the application process, and especially the equity and opportunity issues that need to be in place to support a really equitable fund distribution. And I would just say that we are working with local partners as well on technical assistance, including All Our Kin, the Women's Business Development Council, Staff Family Child Care Networks, and the Office of Early Childhood, United Way of Connecticut, and folks, you know, in philanthropy and across the state. So the ARPA funds are directed to increase the capacity for infant and toddler care in childhood deserts and areas of great vulnerability, to increase access to preschool in areas that need it. Many areas in Connecticut have an abundance of preschool. This project is not looking to compete in areas that already have preschool in place. It's there to expand preschool in areas that still need increased capacity. And we're also looking to increase the quality of programs, especially in regard to infant and toddler care, and of course, an equitable distribution of funding. Many areas in the state, especially those with high social vulnerability indexes, have very few options for early care, and much of Connecticut is certainly a child care desert. So we're also making sure that projects are geographically centered to areas that are really hard to serve, including high social vulnerability areas and also rural areas that often don't receive a lot of the support that cities and support in their surrounding communities receive. So let's go to the next. So eligibility, our center, to be eligible, you can be a center-based program, a family or group program, publicly or privately funded, or an incubator project. Incubator projects are really interesting because what they are co-locating family home providers that don't have a place right now for their own home-based program, but want to learn, to grow, and to be able to one day have a program in their home. So these are co-located and include training and assistance and professional development, really coaching prospective providers to run their own center. And then when they're ready, they can take their information and move into their homes. Eligible projects are a little different than we've had before from the Office of Early Childhood, because these projects will support major renovations and structural changes to buildings, and even removal of load-bearing walls to make a space bigger to include more children. It will support new construction or increasing square footage of an existing building. It will support increasing the quality of learning environments and updating self and safety issues within a family home. It also will provide substantial funding for furniture, equipment that is needed to increase the quality of learning environments. Many of our family home providers, when they're applying for this grant, that is really what they're looking for. They need things like a safe playground. They need a fence that actually is safe for children and is not falling down. So we are really excited about what this project can do for our folks. The full launch opened November 6th, just a little over a week ago. It closes on December 4th. We already have, I think, about 300 applications that have been at least worked on. They can save the applications, and we have about 100 that have been submitted already. And what we will do is, after the grant applications come in, they will be reviewed by a grant committee through a rubric to make sure that we are choosing projects that emphasize the overall goals and equity of the projects selected. And then from there, we will, LISC will do its internal assessment, and then we will be able to make grants. And so that is I'm going to stop sharing right now. That is basically what the Connecticut project is doing in a very small nutshell. And at this point, what I'd like to do is to really have a panel discussion with Paul, Michaela, and Bevan about some of the things that you have found, some of the information you can share about this work. And the first question I have is about the innovations that you find really intriguing, things that you might not be doing right now, but you're thinking about. For example, Bevan, you were talking about childcare being connected, family home childcare being connected to some of these projects. And I think we were talking about, I think, Paul, you had something else that you were talking about in terms of locating support services together. Can you talk a little bit more about that, Bevan, to start? And then we can go through each of you to talk about those innovations that you think could be really coming forward soon that we can look forward to.
Yeah, so I think the challenge with home-based childcare consistently is funding is sort of a business and a private residence simultaneously, and a lot of funders have some difficulty with that, let's say. But it is a regulated business, and it's completely, it has a very, very clear space in our systems, and often are serving infants and toddlers, as Michaela's, these smaller sort of sites really cater to infant and toddler needs and those non-traditional care hours. So they are really critical components of our childcare systems, and in particular for our families. I think where we have seen some issue historically is with public funding supporting the build out or the construction of low-income housing tax credits or what have you. There is some issue at times with supporting also a business or an entrepreneur as a resident of that space. And so there are some workarounds that can be done through condoing these separate sort of resident spaces, and thinking about funding coming from private supports to be able to do that. I mean, it adds to the complication and the legal fees, of course, but it is a really meaningful way to really support this. And in fact, in our Bay Area group, we had a few of those home-based operators that actually worked collaboratively with that center-based location that was on the first floor. And they really supported a pipeline activity of serving those younger infants and toddlers and those off hours families that needed support. And then as the children matriculated up, they were actually attending the preschool at the center-based location. And so they're working collaboratively. There's a continuum of care. Families are being supported from 0 to 5. They're not having to do multiple drop-offs as the kids age up. And so I think there's a really clear sense of that. I do want to say what we would love to see happen is not just that residential units look like just every other residential unit, but that there are considerations made for the fact that they're 50% of the time we'll be housing children within the space. And so access to outdoor space or a larger gross motor space within the, or even additional storage can go a long way to make that program activity really work for the resident and to be able to function as a high quality learning environment as well.
That's really interesting. I know that in the project that I'm working on, one of the issues really is many of the family home providers can't afford a home and they're renting as well. And it's really would be an interesting thought to see how supporting the purchase of a home can build wealth for that small business in a way that many of us have done through owning a home or through a business. So I think right now, because their margins are so slim, that's a really difficult thing to do. And yet they do add to our community's context as well. So Paul, how about you? What innovations are you seeing out there that you would be interested in for the future, for a future project, or that you're doing right now?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that we found interesting in talking to the Friends Center, at least about the daycare, is about providing food, fresh food for the children in the program. So we actually are building a kitchen, a full kitchen, commercial kitchen in the ConnCORP headquarters, which will be providing food to the daycare. And we're also going to be looking to do that to other daycare sites around
Mhm.
Haven. So I think that'll be a great addition to. I know that's a challenge they have now, so that's what hopefully will help meet that challenge.
I
And
think,
that's
yeah, that's fabulous. So you're providing the kitchen, and is it going to be for breakfast and lunch or something similar to that? Or
breakfast and lunch for the school. I mean, for the daycare. We're also looking potentially doing a Saturday, so 6 day a week
Mhm.
daycare. It's, I think it's a little bit different, which would be great. The other thing we want to do is find a way to see if we can provide as much affordable housing as possible. As Michaela mentioned, one of the tough things is finding teachers because the economics of daycare, the margins are so thin, and it's difficult to track people and pay them a livable wage. And so, we're looking at everything we can do to sort of help, create a better economic situation for those workers as well. So that's top of mind for us as well. We've been talking to them about also doing a lot of public programming. We have a public plaza, pretty significant one that will be adjacent to the daycare. So to the extent that we can do farmers markets and other kind of community activities, arts activities as well, convenings in terms of different subject matters. We'll have a space to be able to do that as well. So we want to create a place that will have a community conversation, and we can talk about challenges as we go forward.
That's really wonderful. And I think that when you think about food, it's so necessary for sustenance, obviously, but it is also one of those things that brings a community together. We always have food when we gather, and to have a kitchen that could do evening meals sometimes to bring the community together and connect some of the pieces of the project. That's a really interesting thought to me as well on how to use that. So I really like that. That's a great idea. Michaela, how about you? Are there any innovations coming up or any challenges that you've been facing with your program? It's smaller. Sometimes smaller programs don't get quite, the glamour that larger programs do. Are there any things that you'd like to talk about?
Well, the biggest challenge that we've been facing is simply because the house is historic. It limits us on what we can do on the interior. So we're really trying to go about it where we're meeting the requirements we need to keep the historic nature of the house, but also make it child friendly. And another innovation that, I don't know if it's an innovation, but another aspect to how we're thinking about this childcare is that we really took the time to see how the teachers operate on a day-to-day basis, what it is that they need, and really trying to build those requirements into the space themselves so that everything a teacher needs is more available. So to take away that stress from them, even if it's something as simple as a space to put away cribs that aren't being used, if we've already factored that into the design, it's one less thing the teacher has to worry about. So we're really trying to make it so everything they could potentially need is right there in the classroom. So theoretically, each room could operate as its own school, self-serving and independent, and don't need anyone else to really monitor them. That's really what we're trying to achieve.
That is wonderful. That's a very interesting thought, to make each classroom self-sufficient, to say, so that they have what they need. It's great. I do know, as far as storing items, a lot of the projects that are coming in talk about just that they have a lot of toys, a lot of outside equipment that just gets ruined and has to be replaced so often because it's out in the elements all the time. So it's a really good thought to think about. Because we have some time left and there's a lot to talk about. How about partnerships that you've developed? What are the partnerships that you have each developed, and have there been surprises about partnerships as well as you're working, or what have they done to really help your project move forward? Should we start with Paul again? Go ahead, Paul.
Sure. Yeah. Well, probably our primary partners have been public partners. So we've developed a strong partnership with the city of New Haven. They actually owned two of the properties in our project area, and so we initially started with them. Said we wanted to purchase those two properties. There was a land disposition agreement that we set up about what was going to be done on that site, and they've been very instrumental in helping us to move that through for zoning approvals and permits and all those types of things to get started. We also have a very strong partnership with the state, primarily through the Department of Economic and Community Development. We've received significant funding from them. And thus far, we've already received about $16 million from the state to do the project. We've been approved for that amount. So we've had lots of meetings with state officials, and so we've got to know them very well. Now we're dealing with more of the construction side of the state as well, and so we learned a lot of those layers of what it takes to sort of go through that public system to get funding on the construction side. We also have.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could briefly talk about the social impact bonds that you are using and how you got access to something like that.
Yeah, well, it was actually pretty interesting. Somebody we had an open house one day at ConnCat, which is our training center, and this individual actually came to the open house, saw what he liked, came and liked what he saw, and decided that he would. We had follow-up meetings with him, and there's a particular foundation that he runs that he was looking to do social impact investing, and we actually partnered with the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven, so they became the fiduciary. So it's almost like a donor-advised investment fund as opposed to grant fund, and so this individual put money into Community Foundation for the purposes of our project. And so we're able to draw it down to use for our project, sort of like as a line of credit, a type of instrument. We also then approached another local foundation in New Haven, and that foundation actually, we're still looking to close on that one, but they've committed to do a significant mission-related investment into our project, and that basically just was over a lot of meetings where we talked about what we were trying to do, and the impact that we thought would have on the community. And so this was a major commitment by them because they saw they wanted to do more direct investing as well, and so that was their first one. So it's taken quite a while to get there, but those are two of the funding partnerships that we've had.
Well, thanks very much. It's really interesting, and it's a different way of approaching financing as well.
Right.
I have one question, Bevan. I wonder if you could answer this. There's a question. Many downtowns in Connecticut have disinvested buildings with underutilized first floor retail. Are there ways that these spaces could be used to provide childcare spaces? And I know that question comes up a lot, but what is your viewpoint and your perspective looking at it across the country, and then how we can look at that in Connecticut?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of underutilized space that's coming up, both, commercial space, office space, all sorts of space, right? And I think we can really, we can consider all of this to be childcare. I think a lot of what I would suggest is that understanding the community context and need, and really it doesn't need to be a terribly large, planning session, but understanding, where there are existing points of childcare, where there's resident populations, and where there's employees, right? So to understand sort of size wise, does that amount of square footage sort of correlate to a potential market for childcare? And that's a pretty easy thing. There's a lot of resources and information out there. OEC has a registered list of licensed childcare facilities, likely with capacity numbers, so you can sort of do a quick and dirty around that. And there's great census information around children under ages of 5, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's a very clear, quick indicator. I mean, also, partnering with a CDC or another community partner to understand what family needs are and who's requiring what. I mean, the space really, needs to be informed by community. So much of the aspects of the build out of those pieces, from the types of, the ages of children you're serving, what, where they're coming from, their income-based subsidy, how much, space do they require? Do they have special needs? All of these things, sort of fold into the actual design. And so, I think there's some really easy points to sort of connect with community partners and childcare resource and referral agencies on to understand what folks need. And then there's some high level sort of licensing regulatory frameworks that you should really understand before delving into it. So is it allowable under zoning? And there's some high level sort of aspects related to that too. There's best practice around number of square feet per child. This is hard work, but it can work, and so understanding some of the nuance and getting some experts involved early on to help you make those assessments can save you a whole lot of headache and time if you're asking some of the right questions early on.
That's great. Thanks, Bevan. And Michaela, I want to ask you one last question. You'll get the last word today on your project and what you see for the future from your project, a smaller project, yet just as important. Where do you see projects like yours going? How do you see the future for early care, for early education?
Well, I mean, I think the beauty of being as small as we are is that we seem to get a lot of the same families coming back over and over because they know and trust us. So it's interesting to see how we grow with the families. But I think as time goes on, I'm hopeful that just having these small centers, we just become a fixture in the neighborhood. We're just there. We're always there to help them with their children. And hopefully, as time goes on, we can add on more services that we offer to the families, even from a small space. I hope that's what people learn anyway.
Well, you bring up a really important point because families and early care go hand in hand, and families all need something a little bit different. Some folks are happier in a big center with a lot going on. Others are happier in a small family program. And some like that mid-size sort of feeling of family that comes from a child care facility that's the size that you are have established. And I think that's a really good lesson that we need to start thinking out of the box at how we can provide early care and education in innovative ways, in a way that supports what families need and want for their children. And that can come in all different sizes and all different shapes and can serve the needs of different types of families with different needs. So with that being said, I want to thank you all very much. This has been really, really helpful. If there's one last question, if someone needs to raise their hand, there's 1 minute left. Oh, nope, I guess not. It just done too. I'm going to share my screen though with some information quickly that you can contact us at LISC if you have any additional questions. And there you go. So thank you very much again. And I'll leave this up for a minute while they're switching over. So thanks very much. And it was nice to see you all.